This is a time of transformation on Earth. Many of you already know this. This is a call to action. Yes, Mercury is going into retrograde. However, we're calling you to act in a different way on a different level, to act with love, of course, and awareness and softness, and yet fierceness too. Each one is being asked to change in the ways they know they need to, in the ways you know you need to. You already know, but the time is now. We are being called to make those changes now. It's not about perfection, it's not about being hard on ourselves, but it's time to step up because Earth needs us, humanity needs us. This message has been coming through for the last couple months at least, right? It's coming through again today. I feel I'm connecting with Hecate here, goddess of the crossroads, of change, of transformation. And we are at such a crossroads as a planet, as humanity, as a nation, too, I'm hearing. It's time to act not from service to self, but from service to others. This is the way of summarizing what the change asked of us is to shift more and more into that frequency of serving others, which is not to negate or neglect the self. We are recognizing that we are connected to the self, and to truly take care of ourselves requires taking care of the all and others as well, and vice versa also. We are moving out of a paradigm of the zero sum game, of the idea that when one person wins, another loses, that when one person receives, another loses. It's not like that. This is a time of clarity, of choice, and of action. We're being asked to change, each in our own individual ways, but these ways could be summarized as shifting into service to others. Again, it's not to negate the self. And in fact, they go hand in hand. The more we align with our own true, authentic frequency, the more we are capable of serving in a joyous way, in a helpful way, in a fruitful way, so that we receive abundance and so do all others. As more humans shift into this modality, mass change will occur on Earth. It's the small acts, the small shifts, the seemingly small changes asked of each one of us that accumulate across the globe to create an entirely new paradigm, an entirely new world. This is the time. There's no time to wait. So I'm hearing our true frequency can hide no longer. This corresponds with Saturn and Neptune shifting into Aries. So Neptune shifted into Aries in January 26th, and Saturn is joining Neptune there on February 14th. Let me double check that date. 13th, sorry. Today, the day I'm recording, but later today. Wow, that's synchronistic, right? That I'm recording today, right at the moment that Saturn's about to shift. And then they conjunct each other exact on the 20th. And of course, there's a solar eclipse in Aquarius on the 17th. So they will already be at 0 degrees of Aries at the time of the eclipse and in the couple days before that. And one of the ways this shift into Aries shows up is through deceit, illusion, confusion, even melodrama. I'm hearing no longer being allowed, no longer being allowed to hide in the shadows. This includes self-deception as well. So there's a great revealing happening, and we see it happening on the world stage, of course, but it plays out for each of us individually as well. And so it's time for us also to stop lying to ourselves if we have been, right? To face who we are with love, with kindness, with compassion, with care, and yet to see the truth. And that will help us to make change. And as these planets shift into Aries, the sign of action, of impetus, of new beginnings, of initiative, that will also help us to make change in positive directions. Many people have spoken negatively about what this conjunction between Saturn and Neptune entails. And while any astrological transit can have negative manifestations, there's always also positive potentials on offer. And especially for people who are highly sensitive, who are perhaps introverts, who are more solitary, lone wolves, hermits, many of us are being called out of the shadows, out of our shells, out of our caves, and into the light, into the limelight. I'm even hearing we're being called to step up into our purpose in bigger ways and more expanded ways because we are needed again, right? I'm hearing a little effort goes a long way in this new energy. There's so many shifts that are connected to this bigger paradigm shift underway. And one is that action actually is starting to work differently. In the previous paradigm, great effort was required to move, to make things happen. So we're shifting out of the age of Earth, a 200-year cycle, into an age of air, a 200-year cycle. This is separate from also shifting into the age of Aquarius, also an air sign. So there are two different overlapping long-term cycles that are beginning that both have to do with air, whereas we've been in a 200-year age of Earth, meaning we were operating in a more physical, mechanistic way, not just in terms of the dominant philosophies, but also even in terms of physics, even in terms of like what works, what's effective. And we're shifting into a period where it's like we can make smaller movements with more intention and more precision with bigger outcomes. And so it's a double-sided coin because there's a greater likelihood of sort of accidentally shifting in the wrong direction. But if we're clear in our intention, in our focus, in our purpose, in our desires, in our desired outcomes, in again, the key being whether we're serving self primarily or others, which includes self, right? Then these small shifts we make can have very big positive outcomes. And this is even especially so for those of you who are, sensitive hermits, etc., because you tend to be more intentional, you tend to be more focused. Usually people who have spent more time alone in solitude have developed their inner sense. They've spent time in self-reflection and have a more clear sense of purpose and direction and service. So I'm hearing we are at a crossroads. We are at a choice point, which is interesting because a few weeks ago, I brought through the message that humanity has already chosen. So I would like more clarity on this. Has humanity already chosen? I'm getting kind of like a yes and no. We've chosen in our hearts, and now it's time to choose in our action, right? So this is also coinciding with Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Action is key. Now it's time to follow through on what we've already decided we want. So just like in our own personal lives, we might receive some kind of insight, even a vision, or maybe we just set a goal. around what we want to achieve. And yet it'll only come to pass if we act on that, if we take actions towards that. And the same is true for the human collective as a whole. So it's time for us to act. And again, it doesn't have to necessarily even feel like our actions are directly connected to this kind of big, maybe potentially overwhelming feeling, desire for humanity to change course. Like that is what's at play and what's at stake, even. And yet, the actions we take in our own lives are meant to be aligned with our own soul, with our own frequency, with our own love and passion and compassion and care and interests and desires. There will be an intuitive sense, pushing us towards the right actions to take. It may not be obviously connected to these big, large scale outcomes. The key is staying in alignment, right? In your own intuitive alignment with what feels right and true for you, right? You know it in your heart. And so if ever you're not sure, literally drop your awareness down into your heart. Let's do it now. Taking a moment to bring our center of awareness down to the center of our chest and holding it there for a moment. This is a great way to come out of confusion, right? If we're purely in the mind in a way that's disconnected from the body, from our feelings, from reality, even from the present moment, it's very easy to become confused because the mind is meant to operate in collaboration with the rest of us. When it's a closed system, it just cycles and cycles without getting actual data even from the real world. The primary source of data being the heart, being our feelings, being our body, right? I'm getting that another shift that we're being asked or invited into is to take more of these moments, could be literally 10 seconds or a minute here and there throughout the day, to check in, to feel, to pause, to be in silence, not to leave it to, a practice that we do once a day or once a week, but to start to integrate these practices into our regular life, to make it habitual, normal, to pause and feel, to pause and breathe, to pause and move, even, right? To take 5 minutes to do a little stretch in the middle of the day, to go for a short walk, to go stand in the sun or, breathe the fresh air, whatever it is. Just a couple minutes here and there will have a profound impact. Okay, what else wants to come through? So there's a message here about leadership. And as we more and more witness the degradation of leadership or the revelations of how corrupted so many of our supposed leaders have been and are, the more we witness that, the more important it is for us to recognize that we must be the leaders, especially those of you who are resistant, right? Especially those of us who don't really want to be, who maybe want to live our own quiet lives removed from society to a large extent. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be aligned for everyone. Again, it's always important to feel into your own intuition, but we're learning to discern between what we're drawn to because it's comfortable, because it's safe, because it's what we're used to, versus what might be uncomfortable or scary, even, and yet is our calling, is our purpose, is our path, right? So those two things will feel subtly different. So this takes self-reflection and self-honesty, right? Why are you making the choices you're making? Is it because it's comfortable and safe? Is it because you're avoiding fear, right? Avoiding taking a risk, avoiding stepping out of your comfort zone? Or is it truly aligned, right? And so this is required because someone has to fill the void, right? There's going to be a power void. There already is a leadership void. Um, a similar message came through in December, the Sagittarian channel, around we've witnessed so many examples of misaligned leadership, of corruption, that many of us have assumed that that's what power is, that's what leadership is. But there's a real need right now for people to embody leadership and power in a good way. It's required. So, one of many possible significations for this solar eclipse in Aquarius is to release any shreds of conformity that you may still be clinging to, right? Any patterns that you've adopted that feel safe, that help you feel like you fit in, you won't stand out. So many of us experienced even bullying, but it could be more subtle, right? Being made fun of or just being misunderstood, not fitting in, not belonging. Many of us have adopted strategies to conform, even if it's very subtle, right? So many of you probably don't identify as a conformist, but there's an invitation right now to really turn inward and reflect on ways in which we may still be conforming, like in small ways, or hiding. That's another piece of this. So even if we don't conform, many of us, particularly this group that I've been speaking about, right? The sensitive introvert hermits, many of us have adopted the strategy of hiding, of staying small or just staying quiet, keeping to ourselves. It's a survival mechanism, very understandable, and it has been helpful in very many ways, not just as a way of protecting ourselves, but as a way of having the space and time to develop, to learn, to grow, to develop in our sensitivity and psychic senses, to develop our connection to spirit, to develop intuitively, to lean into who we really are, right? Without the complications of too many other relationships, right? So it has actually been profoundly important for many of us to have this period of relative solitude. But when solitude slips into isolation, then it's time to change, right? So again, self-honesty is asked for here. And even aside from that question as to whether it's solitude or isolation, many of us are being kind of invited out of our like hermit crab shells, right? Out of our caves because we're needed again. And so it's interesting because many in this group also will be deeply caring, compassionate people who really want to help, right? So we're being asked to help in perhaps a different way, maybe a slightly more public way or a slightly more social way. So it is interesting that the eclipse on Tuesday, February 17th, is very close to almost an exact square with Uranus. Okay, so this can indicate sudden changes of direction, of intention, of desire, of focus, of decision, something quick, something perhaps surprising, out of the ordinary, unexpected. And we can use this energy by making those shifts we were speaking of earlier, right? Those little changes that we know on some level it's time for us to make. This is a good opportunity to make those changes now. But of course, there's also a bit of an energy of expect the unexpected. If you're able to take a little bit of space around this time, doesn't have to be exactly on the eclipse, but within the days around it, that's a good idea, right? Just to give yourself a little bit of space to process whatever comes through and to make space for any surprises or changes, but also for movements of energy. There's a big shift in energy that happens around eclipses. It's almost as if there's a portal that opens up and we can send through the portal energies, aspects of ourselves that we're ready to release, any like baggage we've been carrying that we're ready to release. It's easier to do so now. Okay, what else wants to come through here? What else would be useful, helpful, healing? Is there more to say? So I recorded a video the other day about possible fluctuations to financial systems. Nothing to fear. And again, the message that keeps coming through is that it's good news. The changes coming are positive for humanity. But that message might be relevant for some of you listening if you haven't listened to it yet. Okay, what else? Is that it? It feels short, but maybe that's all that needs to be said today. Guys, what else? So I'm hearing when fear arises, look into it, get curious about it, investigate it. Where is it coming from? What is its source? I'm hearing you'll often find that the source of fear comes from outside of you, societal programs, conditioning, fear-based programming. So if you investigate a fear that's arising within you and you find that that's its source from outside of you do not need to entertain it. It is not yours. You can simply say, not me, not mine. Something can arise within your field and you don't have to claim it. And simply in that act of not claiming, it will dissipate, right? It's when we unconsciously identify with everything that arises within our consciousness that it lingers. Because we are identified with it, we presume that it's ours. And in so doing, we claim it. And so it stays, right? So to tend to our own consciousness is as simple as that. It's just about intention. So if something arises that we don't wish to claim, simply unclaim it and it will leave. And dark forces kind of work this way as well. They can very easily trick us into thinking that it is us, right? But if, let's say, a self-defeating thought form arises and you know that it's not wisdom, let's say, you know that it's not really aligned with who you really are, simply say, not me, not mine, simply unclaim it. We don't need to fear if it's in our space. It's natural for these things to come into our space. We're all interconnected, right? We are a part of this collective field. So it being there isn't an issue. It's when we unconsciously claim it that it can haunt us, that it can linger, that it can impact our lives in negative ways. Okay, I'm getting that that's the message for today. It's really interesting. Normally, because today I thought this would be for the podcast, not just for YouTube. And usually when I do these podcast episodes, I record often for 2 hours and it's very intense. But I think because I've been recording myself more regularly and challenging myself to post on YouTube, it's as if it doesn't all have to come through at once, right? I can kind of space out the messages. So that's nice. And I think there's a message in there as well around a small amount, but on a regular basis is very helpful, right? Many of us tend towards extremes, and it can be that way with our practices as well, right? Many of us, everyone's different, but some of us will, do a 3-hour practice on the weekend and then not practice all week. Or like for me, I was doing these podcast episodes once or twice a month kind of thing. And I'm learning to do that practice more consistently as well. And in that way, it's it doesn't need to be so intense, right? So a small amount consistently is often better than a lot less consistently. And that can apply to very many different domains of life. Okay, so that is the message for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate you. If you resonate with me, I am offering a membership where we get together for astrology circles, for guided practices, for Q&A calls. My intention with this membership is that it support you in cultivating a spiritual practice that works for you in just having some support and community around your spiritual path. So if you're interested in that, check the link in the show notes. You can also see the rest of my work on Substack there. So yeah, please do like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, everyone.